Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Laughter Through Tears, the 120 podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Duda. I am a septic shock survivor almost 5 years ago now and counting, May 22nd. I survived a bout of septic shock that was caused when my colon perforated from undiagnosed diverticulitis. Got me flown by helicopter to Baltimore, saved my life. I didn't have an hour and 20 to run by ambulance. They had to call the helicopter. That's why the other half of this podcast is called the 120. So welcome back. I'm so glad that you all could join us. I have a really awesome guest today. She is like the rock star of advocacy. She's inspired me for ever since I knew what Sepsis Alliance was, ever since I saw her story, heard her tell her story. I have had the fortune to sit in audiences and listen to my next guest tell her amazing story of surviving septic shock. And her name is Katy Grainger. She is a septic shock survivor. She's a member of the amputee community as well. When a small cut on her thumb, that's all it took, a cut on her thumb that led to an infection that developed quickly into sepsis and almost took her life. Katy was at death's door. Sepsis not only nearly took her life, it took her limbs, both of her legs and her fingertips. Nonetheless, it's not slowed this lady down. Katy is incredible when it comes to her favorite sports activities, which she still participates in, I believe. She is chilling with her family, doing exciting and fun things on the island of Hawaii where she lives. Well, I'll let her specifically go over all of that. She works tirelessly as a public speaker. She is a vocal and articulate advocate for sepsis survivors and members of the amputee community. You may have already seen her, or you might already be following her on Instagram. If you're not, you need to get over there and follow her. Same thing with Facebook, where you just celebrated, I believe, 200,000 followers on Facebook. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. Katy has also just written a book. It took a while, didn't just write the book, it took her about 6 years, she was telling me, to write her book about her sepsis experience. It's going to debut on May 5th. It will be available sooner for pre-sale. We'll go over that at the end of the episode. It's called Finding Solid Footing. She is also on the board with Sepsis Alliance, and which is, of course, our awesome nonprofit that provides education, awareness, legislation on the Hill, legislative efforts, and the best thing of all, online peer support to survivors, caretakers, and those who have lost someone to sepsis. I've had the extreme pleasure of working with Katy on numerous occasions and listening to her story. And we will both be on the survivorship panel this June at the Unite for Sepsis Symposium, June 11th and 12th in Washington, D.C., hosted by none other than Sepsis Alliance. Katy, I'm so sorry. You have a lot of good things.
Wow. I'm going to leave now. Thank you. You just said it all.
And it was, I mean, you've done so much. So I had to give all those highlights.
Well, thank you. That was the nicest introduction I think I've ever had. That was amazing. And I was writing it down, taking note. I should say these things. Thank you, Jackie. And it's been a pleasure working with you. And you and I've gotten to do advocacy on Capitol Hill, which is something in a million years I never imagined myself doing. Just in my prior life as a mom and soccer mom and raising 2 girls, it just isn't something I saw myself ever doing. And it's just been this whole journey, having become an amputee and getting sepsis and then becoming passionate about sharing awareness, because had I known what sepsis was and known the symptoms better, I understood the basics of it, and I knew it could be very serious. I actually knew someone that lost limbs to it, but I didn't know the symptoms. And so I just didn't recognize how quickly you could become as sick as I became. And unfortunately, with that, oftentimes you have mental decline, and I had that. So I was alone, and my brain was swelling, and I didn't realize it. I maybe had a headache, and I felt like I had the flu, and I didn't feel totally right, but I thought I was just tired, and I missed the symptoms. And I'm very lucky that I had a gut reaction many hours in to call a friend. I don't even remember it, honestly, but I texted a friend and said, can you take me to the hospital? I've never been so sick. So I just became passionate about sharing awareness. I think too few people know what it is. I love watching The Pit right now because they're talking about it on almost every episode. And it's been that way with medical dramas. And I think we understand that it's serious, but it's just so important that people recognize the symptoms. And I will just say, best place to get them, sepsis.org has wonderful information about what the symptoms are and the things that you should look for. And we can talk about it a little bit as we talk today.
Well, the thing, as I started to read your book, and yes, everyone, I did get a sneak peek of Katy's book. And as I was reading it in the beginning, as you were just saying, the lack of mental clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you described that quite well. And
Thank you.
readers will definitely, I think, get a bird's eye view of what it's really like in here when you're developing sepsis.
Yeah. It's very confusing and it's hard to recognize.
Yeah. And how did your story exactly begin? Because I think what always blows all of our minds about your story in particular is it was a tiny cut.
It was so
right?
little. Yeah. So the thing about sepsis is your body's overwhelming reaction to any infection. And we sometimes forget that we get little infections all the time, and it could be a little infection. And I've spent my whole life having infections, and I've had strep throat. I've had my tonsils out. I've had, I had appendicitis. It's like I've had things happen to me. I've had infections in my body. I've had viruses, and I've never had a reaction that was out of the ordinary until I was 52 years old. And, I had a small infection on my thumb. I have a scar there now. It's the scar that you can see right here. I have my thumbs, which is crazy. I'm missing all of 7 of my fingers, these 7. I kept this pinky with some damage on the end. And I always joke that if all I had lost was this pinky, let's see if you can see it there. I'm trying to show that I'm missing the edge of it. There's a little spot here that I'm missing. If that was all that happened to me, I would still be devastated that my body was no longer perfect. And so just because it would just be weird to have I'm like, oh, I wouldn't be able to have my nails look the same. And this nail doesn't grow out normal anymore. It's really weird. But so, I mean, I guess my only point in all of this is I had really dramatic things happen. I lost 7 fingertips and I lost both of my lower legs because I didn't get treatment sooner. And I will go back quickly to what the symptoms were, but I just want to make the point that you don't need to have something as drastic as what happened to me happen for it to be the worst thing that's happened to you or for it to devastate your life. And so there's something about mine being so visual that it makes me an interesting person to tell my story because people can look at it and see something. They can see what happened. Yours and my sepsis stories are very similar. We both got really sick very quickly. I had come back from visiting my kids at college. One daughter had just graduated. The other one was a junior at college. And I had come back from California. I was living in Hawaii at the time. And my husband was on a fishing trip. I felt really tired. I didn't have a lot of appetite, but all of those things are normal with travel. So I didn't think a lot of it. I had a little infection on my thumb. It was weird. It was purple. It was oozing. It just didn't look right. So I went to a walk-in clinic. It was a Friday. And I went in and just said, this is just weird. We had flooding in my area. I was concerned because when flooding happens in my valley, the septic and cesspools, we don't have centralized plumbing. I can't think of what you call it. We don't have a sewer plant that treats the sewage. And so everybody either has a cesspool or a septic tank, and it's an old valley. There's a lot of places that are just cesspools. And what happens when you get a flood like we got with 18 inches of water through the whole valley is that all of those overflow and it becomes filthy. It's just kind of coincidence that sepsis and septic are based in the same word. It's, I think, bacteria is kind of where that comes from. But mine actually was from this overflow, just basically making my valley unsafe. And it was being held in leaves and it was being held in mud puddles, and that bacteria just wasn't going away. So it was several months after the flooding that I got sick. And I think I'd put my guard down. In the beginning, we were all being very careful being outside. We were covering our hands. We were washing frequently. We were wearing full shoes instead of just Hawaiian slippers or flip-flops or thongs or whatever you want to call them. And we were being careful for a while, but then we sort of let our guard down. And I think that's what had happened with me, is that I kind of let my guard down. I got a little infection, and then we don't know why. We haven't done enough research on sepsis to really know why it sometimes happens. So we just have to keep in mind, it can happen to anyone at any time. I was very healthy when it happened, and it happened to me. So something happened that triggered this reaction in my body. And as I said, my symptoms were really subtle. I was really tired. I didn't have much appetite. And then one of the things that happens is there's a massive swelling that happens in your body. And that's what illness is in our bodies. Oftentimes it's a swelling reaction, but it impacts your brain.
Yeah.
Yes. Inflammation. Thank you for that word. And so that inflammation was swelling my brain, and it caused me not to think clearly. So as I was getting sicker, I was not reasoning well, but I wasn't aware of it. I just perceived it as being tired. And so I sort of missed the fact that I wasn't making sense. I look back at my texts. I told somebody that I wasn't urinating. I mean, when I called a friend the next day, it was 36 hours after I'd been in the clinic. I called a friend and said, I haven't been able to pee, and I threw up. And I didn't even know that until I looked back at those texts, that those were even symptoms I had. But those are very serious symptoms. That there was some type of infection, that I had an infection in my body and now I'm vomiting. That is a sign that something's going on that you need to get looked at. And I just didn't realize it because I was not thinking clearly. And so fortunately, I did call 36 hours later and get help and have someone take me to the hospital.
Right, because it was Friday afternoon, it started.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, as I was reading the intro in your book, and it was Friday afternoon, then as I'm reading it, and now I'm a sepsis survivor, so I know what sepsis is. And I'm reading it, and I'm going, oh my God, Katy, get to the hospital.
I can see it. I can see it. I can see it.
It's coming. It's, Saturday. And then was it Sunday when you finally went?
It was Sunday morning, and I don't even remember waking up and calling for help. I have no memory of it. I have a very garbled text message that I sent out, and my friend came down and got me. And when she got to my house, I was passed out on my bed. So she knew something was really wrong. And I had actually gotten up in the middle of the night. I think what I did is I got up to go to the bathroom, possibly to vomit. I don't know. Possibly just to pee. I don't know. I'm getting older. I do that, So I'm not sure what, but what I do know is that I had a broken bone in my foot, and I had a sprained ankle on the other side, and I had abrasions on my knee. So there's 2 steps up to my bathroom, and I think I missed a step in the dark, either just didn't have the common sense to flip a light on, or passed out because I stood up too quickly. I just don't know what happened. But then I crawled back and put myself to bed instead of calling for help. And so that right there is a sign that something was really wrong. Then I woke up in the morning and called for help. And so it's just a miracle that I even got the help I needed. And she rushed me to the hospital. There's a whole story. I will just quickly say, we live 20 minutes farther from the hospital, away from the ambulances. So if she were to call an ambulance, we would have sat at my house and waited for 20 minutes. Right. And it was like really early in the morning. And so it made more sense for her to hop in the car, have 911 ready to go, and then just start driving. And so she was following each of the mile markers. So she could say, we're at mile marker 16, I'll meet you at, And so she was ready if she needed help. She knew I was really sick, but it was quicker to get me there that way. And I have found out, and I will say this, I did not put this in the book. She read what I wrote in the book about it, and she goes, Katy, we got there in 30 minutes. It takes an hour for me to get to the airport, but usually there's traffic, and there was no traffic. And she said, I got there in 30 minutes, which means that she was not driving the speed limit. And there are lots of long, easy stretches where there's no driveways, and it's just kind of, it's like there are places where one could speed more safely than maybe in a city. It's much more rural. And so she got me there as safely as she could, but she definitely drove very fast. And then we just got really lucky, not hitting any church traffic or anything because it was a Sunday.
And geography can be very important when it comes to sepsis.
Absolutely.
So you were more or less living like in a more rural area.
Correct. And just the islands of Hawaii. I mean, the Hawaiian Islands are that way anyway. I mean, and it
Right.
was more rural, but they are all that way. I mean, it's like there are long stretches where there's nothing. And it's not until you get to Oahu, which is where Honolulu is, where you get a major city. And so we do have a level 1 trauma center on Oahu. And everyone knows the kind of the joke here is if you get your leg bit off by a shark, everyone knows, you know, you're going to stop the bleeding. You're most likely going to survive because most people do. You're going to be the luckiest person in the world because it really doesn't happen to many people ever. You know, I mean, it's just kind of a joke here because we know that sharks don't ever mean to bite people, and it just is a very rare occurrence. But still, when people are in the water a lot, you think about it. So it is kind of the thing that's like, if you got your leg bit off by a shark, you're going to stop the bleeding, they're going to get you to the hospital, and then they're going to immediately airlift you to Oahu, to the level 1 trauma center. And that is actually what happened with me. I was sick enough by the time I got there. I do want to mention one thing, just in fairness to the clinic that I saw. When I went to the clinic, and I know it's not this way for everybody, there are people who go in with true symptoms that they might be in, that they might have sepsis, and they are sent away and dismissed. So one of the messages I'd love people to get, I'm sure you've stressed it many times, is just ask the question, could this be sepsis? You know, it's like, and point out, like, I have this little infection and I'm feeling kind of sick, because that's often what it looks like. It's some type of like sickness with some infection, and that the two don't really relate. Like if I'm vomiting, that shouldn't be related to a finger, you know, or if you have strep throat and you're throwing up, those shouldn't be related. Or you have a big rash on your body, that shouldn't be related. So just mention sepsis. You don't need to diagnose it, but just point it out. But just in fairness, if you are entering more serious stages of sepsis, your blood work will show it. So you could ask to have blood work drawn. And I did have blood work done. And, well, it was sent off to a lab. They weren't able to tell me anything immediately at that first meeting. But they took my vital signs. And when your vital signs are normal, your body is not in a serious state. So I was not seriously ill at all when I went in. All of my vital signs were absolutely normal. I wasn't breathing heavily. My blood pressure was fine. Every vital sign was fine. I was thinking clearly. Everything was fine. Now, that deteriorates very rapidly with sepsis. So 36 hours later, when I went in, I had a blood pressure that they were like, I couldn't even sit up and without like feeling lightheaded. You know, I could barely stay awake. And I had fallen in the middle of the night. I mean, my blood pressure was extremely low, and my heart was pounding, and I was breathing heavily, and I was immediately put on oxygen, given antibiotics, and given fluids for resuscitation to help my body as like life support. It wasn't true life support, but it was like the beginnings of it. It's like, let's help her body. It's struggling somehow, and we need to figure out why. So they very quickly determined that something was wrong. And then I had another symptom called DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, which causes bleeding at your extremities. That's the ends of your limbs, bleeding and clotting in your capillaries. So it's almost like Ebola in your fingertips and your feet. And then your body immediately sends out clotting factors, but you only have so much that can clot, and then you run out. So if you're not in a hospital when this is happening, you can die from that. I was in a hospital, so they gave me extra clotting factors, and it's like a blood transfusion. So they transfused a type of, you know, I don't know exactly what it is, but they gave me basically blood clots to go in and stop that bleeding in my extremities. However, that made it worse. It was cutting off the circulation. The reason we knew I had it is it was extremely painful. And in the car on the way to the hospital, I started crying, saying my hands and feet are on fire. And that's part of the reason my friend was driving so fast.
Is that when you felt that your hands and feet were on fire?
Yes, and it was extremely painful. And I had a friend come later from Seattle. She flew over to be with me because my 2 daughters were trying to get in touch with my husband. He was on a river in remote Idaho, and he couldn't be reached all day. And so they didn't know what to do. And my friend just said, I'm going. I'll go be with her. And my friends from Hawaii also stayed with me. So I had really amazing support. But I've told her that I said, I wish I could remember. And she said, no, you know. She said, I will just tell you, I've never seen you in so much pain in my life. And it was awful for you. You were miserable. And so the fact that you can't remember it is a blessing. And when I woke up later, my hands and feet did hurt. And so I have an idea of what that was like, but I don't remember how excruciating it was. So I'm
And you
fortunate in
didn't
that.
have surgery or anything right away, right?
No,
Or
so I spent one night in the hospital on Kauai, and
yeah,
then during that time they were working to try and get me transferred to Oahu, and the hospital I was at was affiliated with a different hospital than the level 1 trauma center, so they were gonna get me transported there, and I my family was asking that I go to the level 1 trauma center. And the reason was that we knew, well, first of all, they're going to see more people as sick as I was. And then the secondary thing was that they logically were understanding that my circulation was being cut off and that there was a risk of limb loss. I think they knew that really early on. We had a friend of the family that lost a limb to sepsis. So I think they
yes.
were worried about that from the very beginning. I was not. I was clueless. I was just I don't remember anything at this part of time. And so which is great. I don't need to remember it. It's
Yes.
great. I didn't know what was
Yeah.
going on. I was taking
It's a
pictures and
blackout
smiling
or
and doing
something. Yeah.
weird things. Yeah. So, but they wanted me to have hyperbaric chambers available, and the Queens Medical Center had them and the other hospital didn't. So the problem was they didn't have room in the hospital for me. But it turns out that what they do is if there is someone that's more sick that needs a bed in the ICU, it's just like anything, it's triage. They can find someone who's ready to move into a room, and then they might have been a day from getting out. Like they were maybe
Right.
going to have them go tomorrow, but they'll move them over there today with an ICU nurse watching over them, and then they
Yeah.
move me in the other end more severely in need. So they were able to shuffle and get me in there the next day, but not that night. And it was not actually, the truth is I spent then I was put into a medically induced coma to fly over. Did the same thing happen for you, Jackie?
Everything went black for me after I was awake to be intubated, which
Yeah.
was not fun.
Oh, you
And
were.
they
See,
put
I
a
was not.
central line in. And then somewhere along the line, I faded. I don't remember being put on the
Yeah. Okay.
helicopter. I don't
So,
remember any of that.
oh my gosh, I can't imagine that. I was not aware of any of it. I think, so I was put into the coma. I was actually put into a coma. So I was not aware of what was happening. And I spent 8 days in that condition. And during that time, my hands and feet basically died. Not my hands, my fingertips. And my hands were dying. And they told my family that, first of all, the first night they said, we don't think she's going to survive. So everyone get over here. And then, when I did survive and made it through the worst of it and things started turning a little bit to the positive, they were like, okay, we've got some progress like this. She might make it. We don't know. We're not saying she will, but she didn't go the first night. And that was the scariest. And my husband finally got, after like 3 days, got someone to say, he said, can you prepare me for what we might expect? And he said, you should be prepared that she could lose her hands and feet. And because that's the most likely scenario here, like with the damage that she has. And so you want to prepare yourselves for that. So they were prepared and ready for that. And my daughters told my husband, he said, what would your mom want in this situation? I mean, like, what do we do? And they said, oh, we do everything in the world to get her alive because we haven't had babies yet. She wants to be a grandma. She wants to be here, Dad. And she can hold babies even without hands. And that was their logic. And he just said, you're right. You're right. And they were absolutely 100% right. I would never not. I mean, I only want to be here. And I have many friends who are missing their hands, and they are happy, lovely, wonderful people living full and amazing lives where they appreciate every day because we all know how close we were to dying. And it really does give you this new lease on life when you come that close. And I think that's, what has given me the strength, and I think you the strength as well, to move on and do something with it where it's educating the world and it's making something positive out of this.
Yeah, and my daughters always call me the most petty person on the planet. So
Oh,
I'm
that's so
mad
funny.
that I didn't know what sepsis was.
Yeah.
So it's now my mission to go around and tell people what sepsis is, so
That's
that
so
they
funny.
will know, so that they will know, and
It
they
makes you
can't
mad.
get them like it got us.
And I'm a people pleaser, and I always want to see the cup half full. And so I'm always looking at the positive. But it's funny. So different motivations for both of us. You're
Yeah.
mad, and I'm I'm grateful. And so,
Yeah.
and I just look at it and just think, I got him college educated. I had I started off as a biology major. I thought about going into healthcare. I mean, I ended up going into psychology and getting a Bachelor of Science in psychology because I liked people and was interested in that and just didn't want to go so heavy science. But I have that background but I'm a people pleaser. And so I'm just like, okay, I have this background. I had all this knowledge. I was a mom for 22 years and I didn't know the big thing I haven't even mentioned yet. I never had a fever. And so all weekend I was taking my temperature and I never had a fever. Well, it's not uncommon, it turns out. It's actually
That's true.
a certain percentage of people who have sepsis don't get fevers, or they don't start taking their temperature until they maybe spiked a fever and then it went away. It has something to do with our body sort of prioritizing what it needs to do. And once you get a certain level of sickness, it doesn't have that reaction. I mean, maybe that's just us trying to explain something we don't know how to explain. So, I think in true honesty, they probably don't know exactly why that happens sometimes. They do know statistically that when people don't have a fever, they actually have a higher chance of dying. And and probably because they don't get help. Because no one ever told us that you could be really sick without a fever. So one of my big messages is, you can be really sick without a fever. And no one told you that. And so if you don't have a fever, but you have symptoms, don't write it off, because I'm sure that's why I never got help, that I didn't get help sooner. And because I wasn't peeing, I threw up. When I threw up, I thought it was because I took an antibiotic, because I was given antibiotics. They gave me a topical antibiotic ointment and said, use this. And if you're not seeing improvement by morning, or if it's getting worse, certainly, then start taking the antibiotics. And you should, over the weekend, if it's not getting better quickly, go into the emergency room. And so I had that information to do that. They prepared me well. I think they could do better. I mean, I think in general, the health system could do better educating people about sepsis, but we're working on it. We're getting there. It's improving, and there are places that do it very well. And they prepared me well, okay, but not well enough, because look what happened. And I did almost die at home by myself. And that would have been tragic.
That's frightening, I think, because you were alone too.
Right,
Your husband was away, the girls weren't there, and it was just you.
Yeah, and you do hear the same story. I mean, I've heard so many people's stories, and it's so often the family also is like, well, she just has the flu. She happens to have a cut on her. She happens to have this infection, and she just has the flu at the same time. What bad luck. And because people don't understand that that's not bad luck necessarily. It might be, but the odds are also that it might be sepsis. So you want to go in and get into an emergency room and say, I have these two things going on at one time. Yeah. Can we take a look at it? The other thing is, you don't always know when you have an infection. So even the flu can be sepsis, and sometimes sepsis begins with a stomach infection. It can begin from eating bad food, just because that infection in your stomach, food poisoning, can cause that random reaction that sometimes happens. And so sepsis is complicated. But it's important that people understand that it can happen, that it is just something to consider when you're getting seriously sick. And the final thing that got me to the hospital is I woke up and I had a gut feeling, and I texted my friend and said, I have to go to the hospital. I've never been so sick. So I finally had a very clear understanding that and sometimes what people will say is, I'm going to die. I'm afraid I'm going to die. And maybe that's how I felt, but I didn't want to be that dramatic, or it was less letters to text. I don't know. But my gut told me, you're not okay. And but the problem is, your gut often doesn't tell you that until your organs are failing and you're really, really, really sick. So you want to try and catch the symptoms sooner by learning them at sepsis.org, or understanding what they are. And I won't go into too much detail. At some point we can talk about them at the end if we have time. But
definitely. And Dawn Smith, our another favorite sepsis survivor, colleague of ours, he also said something very similar to what you just said, that when it was the sickest he'd ever been. Yeah. And that's hard to describe. We're human beings. We get sick. We all get the flu. We all get colds. I just had bronchitis last week, and we get sick. That's what humans do. So it's like, how do you know when it's the sickest you've ever been? But like Dawn said, you'll know. And I think as you realized, you knew you knew.
You do, and I think, but it's incredible. Our ability to deny things is incredible, and I think our embarrassment at inconveniencing other people and just not wanting to be difficult. I mean, I think there's a chance, I don't know for sure, but I think I waited until dawn to call somebody because it would be rude calling in the middle of the night, you know?
I'll call somebody.
And I also think I was concerned about an ambulance coming to my house because I live down a very private driveway. I mean, so you go by a neighbor's house and then you go down this long driveway to our house. And I wouldn't, I mean, I just
You
know
were worried
me,
about what the neighbors were going to think.
what they were going to think. And if my town had heard an ambulance coming down the hill in the middle of the night, it would have been, lots of people would have heard it. If anyone saw it driving down our driveway, they'd have been worried about me and about my neighbor, and phone calls would have started. And I think I was probably scared that they would call my husband, or that I'd scare my neighbors. And I didn't want to scare my neighbors because I wasn't that sick, you know? I mean, it is amazing. We don't like to inconvenience people. And I think men and women do it. And a lot of people say, oh, men don't like to do it because they don't want to admit they're sick. And I think we all do it because it's just, we don't want to inconvenience somebody else. Even a EMT whose job it is. You're like, well, they might have someone who's more sick. I don't want to bother them. And the other thing is, it's very expensive. And, you know, not all health policies cover an ambulance. And,
no, they don't.
And not all of us have friends that we feel comfortable. Afterwards. Yeah, that we feel comfortable calling in the middle of the night. So there are a lot of things that stop us. But I think, hopefully after listening to your podcast and hearing my story and other stories like it, people realize that, we are. One of the things that I've been trying to figure out the common thread with my story and with like what my advocacy work is and what is my message like on social media and what do I want to try and tell people. And I started off saying, here are the symptoms of sepsis. I want you to recognize when this is happening to you. And then I had people say, well, okay, so I have mental decline and you're telling me, and I do tell people, if you have mental decline, go to the hospital. That's just not okay. Like if you were fine and then you're someone calls you on the phone and you're slurring your words, or you are saying something that doesn't make sense, or you're confused or not able to follow a conversation well, or you're so tired you just can barely wake up, those are normal. And it's your brain. It's your brain. It's important. So anytime you have mental decline, and so people have said, how do you know it's sepsis? And I'm like, I don't care if it's sepsis. If you have mental decline, go to the hospital. So I realized part of what I want my message to ultimately be when I can figure it all out is, how do we as humans who have bodies and we're responsible? When I left that clinic, they basically said, okay, bye, Katy. Thank you. Here's a piece of paper. Now you're going home by yourself for the weekend. I'm giving you over to yourself, and now you're your doctor. So this weekend, the only person that can save your life if something's going to try and get you is you. And so you need to be extremely vigilant because you're sick. So you really need to watch it closely. And I actually did do something that not all people would do, and I do encourage people to do, is I called a friend and I said, I'm homesick alone. And I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to know I'm back in town and that I'm here and that Scott's gone and the girls are at college and starting a new job. And so I'm on island and you're nearby. Can you call me in the morning and just make sure I'm okay? And I did that because of this other girl who had. It was until she called me in the morning and I said, I'm great. I feel fine. I don't even have a fever. Great. That was one of the things I said to her. And she's the person I then called the next day saying, oops, it's more than I thought. It turns out I think I'm going to die. And and she was traumatized thinking, dang it, yesterday you called me saying you were fine. And then she called me and said, hey, I'm up the road. Can we bring you lunch? I'm with some of our other friends. Can we just bring you lunch? And I said, no, I'm fine. It's okay. And the reason I said no is because I was so tired. I was sleeping. And then I thought, well, I'm just tired because I was traveling, and we just make these excuses. So it's just important to understand that we are the ones who have to get ourselves to the hospital. Most sepsis happens in the community. People hear about it because people die in the hospital from it. But the reason they die in the hospital is because they got it, then they went to the hospital and it was so bad, then they died. I mean, I would have died in the hospital with it, but that's not where I got it. And that's not where I needed to recognize it. So it really is up to us to recognize when we're that sick. And I I would love in a perfect world that there be a little manual that says, if this, then that. Like we know that if we cut ourselves a certain depth and we're bleeding a certain amount, we know we need to go in and get stitches. I think everyone kind of understands when that's important. But we don't know it for some of the more subtle signs.
I was looking for it in my drawer here. So I do have one of Sepsis Alliance's time cards here.
Yes.
The infamous time card, which does give you a really good generalization of the basic symptoms.
Yes. Do you want to go over it quickly?
Yeah, we have time, which of course we have the T is for temperature, the I for infection, the M for mental decline, which Katy has so eloquently explained here and been talking about, and then the E for extremely ill or extreme pain or extreme. It's just sepsis is an extreme thing. And the mental decline is, I think what you also so well described, Katy, is how it goes up and down. Like you were on like a little roller coaster of symptoms, which is sometimes what happens to us in general when we get a fever anyway. We'll spike a fever, then we get the chills and our body's trying to get rid of that fever, and then it comes down and then it spikes again. So you just can't like one off say, oh, I'm better and I'm okay. You really do need to see what's happening next because it's probably not over. And for you, it was not over.
It wasn't.
Until it was almost over. And
another thing is that I was texting. I only texted with people because I was kind of tired. And so I was just texting. So had I taken a phone call from them, would I have been slurring words a little bit and just sounding? They say, sometimes people sound drunk. I have a friend that got sepsis recently, and he went into work, and his coworkers were like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm fine. I just been so sick, and I'm like, And he just sounded like he'd been drinking or something. And they're like, and he was fighting strep throat, and he's like, I had antibiotics for 2 days, but I don't know what, and he just didn't sound like himself. And the guy asked him a couple questions, said, get in my car, I'm taking you to the hospital. And he got there and he said, you have sepsis. And they caught it early because they recognized that symptom and they just recognized it was weird. So, the whole texting thing, it puts a layer between us and the person receiving the message. And so that I'll never know if I was slurring or if I would have said something silly.
And by the time your texts could have gotten to a point where they sounded like you were drunk texting someone, that would have meant your sepsis was clearly like off the charts.
Right. And that's where it was. The text I sent, and I put it in the book, the text I sent was all nonsense. Some of it was clear, but some of it was just nonsense. But you can see what it says. It was all capital letters. It was capital letter space, capital letter space. It was this funny, I don't even know what I think I was trying to make capitals or something. I don't know what I was doing. It was very strange. But if you read it, you could see that it said, I have never been so sick. But it was I space, H space, V space, N space, V space, R space. It was really funny. That's what it looked like in all capital letters. But if you just looked at it, you'd go, this says I have never been so sick. And so there it is, that classic symptom. But by the time it gets there, you are so dangerously sick. And they just couldn't reverse what had happened at that point. So, so important that it be done, that it be recognized sooner, and that people just having an idea once you've heard my story and Jackie's story and other stories, just at least it's out there. So I share it a lot on social media. And I know like TikTok, I had a lot of success on there because everyone wants to know how I lost my fingers and my lower legs because of a little infection. And so I kind of hook them with that.
On TikTok.
It's curious. So, but they're also, a lot of them are very young and they want to whip through the story really quickly and just see what the answer is really quick and then go, oh, it was sepsis. But even if I'm like, if that's all they get, and then they remember, oh, that's that thing I hear about on those TV shows. Then if they get sick sometime, they might go, oh, that lady, she had sepsis. I'm going to go look it up. That's what my theory is that they're going to go online then and look up sepsis and say, I really should learn about that. Because apparently that lady didn't know what it was and she lost her legs. And I'm fine if that's who I am to them, But it turns out that, the thing that's been really fun is that the audience that's really following me is older women. And what a fabulous audience to have. I love it. And I'm sure you have a very similar audience. And
I do. I do.
it's great. And I think, I think we have children, we're grandparents, we are later in life and wiser, and we want to know the things that we didn't know when we were younger and make sure that we don't, that our kids don't miss these things, and keep an eye on our grandkids and know for ourselves as we age, because we become more susceptible again to sepsis and to infections as we age and to all chronic illnesses. And so I think we're really, we're now later in life more interested in these things and realizing the importance. So it's a good audience.
Pointed out as well that it's community. Most of the time, sepsis is acquired in the community, meaning
yes,
you didn't get it in the hospital. It comes from an infection that someone develops outside of the hospital, and it can happen to anyone. And the thing about Katy's story that always got me too, well, the thing about your story is that you were so active, athletic, doing all kinds, swimming with sharks, doing all kinds of things.
Not often.
And here she is, this young, healthy, active person, and she gets cut and develops sepsis. So, I mean, if that doesn't prove to all of us that sepsis can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
I'm chronically ill. I have been ill most of my life. I have rare diseases, and someone might say, well, that's normal for somebody like you to develop sepsis, but it happened to Katy too. And it happened to Dawn Smith, and it happened to other survivors.
And it's not, it's, yeah, you're exactly right. And it is, I think that it is important to put a face on it that is that, face of just a healthier face that, and just a, it's not, I don't mean face, I don't mean face, but I mean, for the person to be someone who is, well educated. I studied biology, and I understand. I had kids, and I took care of them. I was the doctor of the house, Dr. Mom, and I've had my own health conditions and very well aware, and yet it still happened. And I still let it get so far along. And I mean, in fairness, and I'm not saying this to belittle myself or say anything negative, but the reality is I let it go that long before I got the help, because no one else was going to save me. It had to be me. And I let that happen because I just wasn't as informed as I thought I was. And I thought that without a fever, this couldn't be something that would impact my whole body. And I was mistaken. And so I'd like to make sure that people kind of understand that it's like, don't try and be a doctor. We're not doctors. And so learn the things that you need to know to get you in there, and go get an opinion, and know that some things happen very quickly. And sepsis is one of them. It happens very quickly. It goes from, it's just an infection to, oh my gosh, it's now in my body and I'm having any set of symptoms. And it is a syndrome. That's why, Jackie and I are being a little bit elusive about what the exact symptoms are. But it can sometimes be rashes. It can sometimes be broken blood vessels, pain in your hands and feet, cold in your hands and feet, shivering or feeling very hot. There's a lot of mixed things that can go on. And sometimes people have a little bit unusual symptoms. But I like to tell people, like, if you have an infection that you know of and you start getting sick in a way that is different, red alert, very big red alert, and then get online, look up symptoms, get them from several sources so many symptoms, and then, get in and get an opinion about it. Don't diagnose yourself, and don't minimize. Yeah.
Don't come back and watch this podcast, because this is not for medical advice.
Right. And it took too long. It takes too long anyway. We're not going to tell you all the symptoms. But it's like, go, and I'm not saying be Dr. Google either. I'm not, it's like, don't diagnose yourself, but you do need to understand what symptoms you've got to look out for to get you in to get a diagnosis, and mention sepsis when you go in. And if they say, oh, it doesn't look like that, we're going to send you home, then say, explain to me why. Show me my chart and explain to me why.
How and you rolled it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Rolled it out. Yeah.
And in my case, if I had done that at the clinic, they would have said, well, here's how we ruled it out. And I've double checked, and this is true. Your blood pressure, heart rate, breathing rate, temperature, everything was normal. You had an infection on your finger, and we were concerned about it. We gave you treatment for that, and we sent you home with a sheet of paper. And if you look on that sheet of paper, it says, look for your symptoms to change, and if they change, come back in. And I think we often overlook that part of the process. We're like, oh, well, I went in, and if you have to go back a half hour later and say, oh my gosh, I got in the car and I threw up, and now I have a new symptom, I'm a little nervous. Like, are we okay with this? They might say, you know what, that's not okay. We're going to do some deeper. We're going to draw blood right now. We're going to look for biomarkers of sepsis. And we're going to take this. We're maybe going to watch you for the next 3 hours. You get comfortable in here, and we're going to keep an eye on you because we know you're going home alone. And so don't ever be afraid to go right back because you might need to.
Right. Katy, how long were you in the hospital? When it was said and done?
It was about 6 weeks total. But it was just, like I said, it was just overnight at the first hospital. Then it was about a month that I spent in the next hospital, which was Queens Medical Center on Oahu, where I had, and what we were trying to save my hands and feet. My fingers were goners by the time I woke up. They were black and they looked like charcoal. They were shrunken and black and clearly not alive. And I knew that. I recognized that. We never used the word amputation. That was something that my family was really careful to protect me from that word because I was clearly not using it. And I would say things like, oh, I think I'm probably going to need surgery. I would say just subtle things that they're like, she's just not ready. I mean, we all know she's going to need surgery, but she's just not ready. So and I think that's one thing I advise families is be really careful. Let the patient guide you. My hands were really red and damaged, and we weren't sure they would survive, but they did through hyperbaric treatments and through nitroglycerin treatments. So I spent like 3 weeks doing these treatments. And so I was 1 week in the ICU, 8 days in the ICU, about 2 weeks of treatments. And then after the 2 weeks of treatments, I said, I know we can't save my feet. And that was what they were kind of waiting for. At that point, my hands were looking healthy, and we were just amazed that they were coming back. My thumbs were healthy, which is incredible. And then we realized that we made the decision to go back to Seattle, which is where we had lived before, and be treated there and have my surgeries, which is all I called them. I wanted to have my surgeries in Seattle because I felt like they had done it more, and they had. I mean, they're the level 1 trauma center for multiple states. So all the car accidents and motorcycle accidents and the way people lose legs. I mean, we all think like there's a million shark bites in the world and people lose limbs to them all the time. It just doesn't happen that often. And it does happen on occasion. And there have been a few, and a few people have had surgeries here because of that, to correct that, but there have been a few accidents here, but it's a much smaller population, so it made sense to go to a bigger city. And so we flew back to the Seattle area where my family lived in Washington State, and so did Scott's, and we had a lot of long-term friends there and place that we could stay, and it just made the most sense. Didn't make sense to go back to Honolulu. It was too small an island. We lived an hour from the hospital. There were no prosthetists for prosthetic limbs on the island of Kauai. And so we could have, there are a couple on Oahu, but not a lot. Yeah. And so we're like, we just need to go back to where we have resources until we learn about this new world. And then we can decide to be here more. So we do still split time between Washington State and Hawaii.
And I am kind of jumping around here in our questions.
That's great.
Because
Let's do it.
You're explaining this so well, and it just kind of naturally flows. So so you were back over on the mainland, and is that where like real recovery started to take place? Like, what was the most frightening aspect of all of this? Because I can't imagine.
I know.
Your limbs
The most shocking moment for me was being extubated and waking up and not knowing what was happening. I had severe ICU delirium, so I wasn't thinking clearly at all. And it's really common, and they're finding out it's extremely common. Like they should just tell you we're putting them into a coma, and by the way, when they come out, they're going to be confused for a while. Because I think statistically the odds are that you will have it as opposed to it might happen. And I don't feel like we're as well educated on that as we should be. So in general, if you ever are in an ICU, you probably will have issues afterwards. And I did. I was hallucinating and very confused a lot of drugs in your system and a lot of time that you've been in a room where people have been poking and prodding and there's machines making sounds and you don't know what's day and what's night and you're out, but you're still maybe somewhat aware. And so anyways, I woke up from that and I saw my fingers and I could tell that my fingertips had died. And so I'm going to say that that is the moment that was the most just shocking. But I think, because I was so confused at that time, I just chose denial. And so I knew in the back of my head though, that whole time, I knew my fingertips were not okay. But I didn't, and I think that's why my family didn't want to talk about it, because I didn't want to talk about it, so everyone was just following my lead. I knew that they were damaged. I knew we were trying to save them, but I just didn't want to talk about what we were saving them from or anything. But the very hard, there's three. So there's the next hardest moment was when I had to admit that we weren't going to save my feet. And, that was, just one of that will forever be one of the most traumatic moments of my life. And then of course, having my lower legs amputated and then my fingertips amputated. And so kind of 4 big moments in the whole thing that were and I chose to have my surgeries. And this was great because they let me choose how I would have my surgeries. And they said, we could do it all at once. And I just said, oh God, no, I can't. I don't want to, and they just said, no, it's okay. Because your other option is we could do your legs first, because we need to do that because you have a type of gangrene. It's called wet gangrene, where I still was bleeding and I still had tissue that could become infected. And so it was really a concern. They said, we do your legs first, and then you can wait because your fingertips are safe. They have dry gangrene. They're hard and black and there's no blood flow. And so they're not going to become infected. We'll watch them closely and make sure that at the connection between the bad tissue and the good tissue, nothing happens. But they were fine. So they gave me that option, and I chose to go back 2 weeks or a week after getting back, or a few days after getting back. We amputated my legs in Seattle, and then I went home for a month, and then a month after the leg amputations, we did my fingers, and then I had my
steps.
Yes, it was in phases for me. And again, that was my choice. Some people do it all at once and prefer that. And I totally understand. I just think it's beautiful that I was given an option and that people do have some options about these things, about what's going to work best for them. And it really, truly did work best for me for so many reasons. And a lot of them emotional and mental, but also, it's a lot. It would have been a lot to have everything going on at once. I would have really felt helpless. And I already was feeling very helpless, but I think it might have been the thing that could have just put me over the edge and made me so depressed. I just, would have had really trouble coming out of it. So it was nice having that power. And after being so powerless, after watching these things happen to me and watching my family being, my family was trying to include me, but they had to make decisions, they were the ones with the good mental capacity, and they had been studying this whole thing for the whole week I was out. So by the time I woke up, they knew more about sepsis and DIC and amputations, than, they had a college level understanding of it all. They did nothing but study it. And I came out of it and it was brand new to me. And then I was confused. So I wasn't the best person to be making the decisions necessarily. And, but they made me feel like I was a part of it, and they started giving me my autonomy back. And that was really important to my healing.
Some control, because sepsis is such an out of control experience that gave you some form of control.
And it was so important to my mental health.
Right.
And my identity.
And this was 8 years ago, right? This was 8.
Yeah, now. Almost 8 years. So, 8 years in September. It was Sepsis Awareness Month when it happened to me. So every year we roll around and I'm like, it's my anniversary month and it's Sepsis Awareness Month. And
right. So. And then, so after I can't imagine what the rehab was like.
Yeah, it's a lot. I was so overwhelmed that I just took everything just one little thing at a time. So I literally would chunk my days into just appointments. I had, we were in a position that we could do this. We were able to hire a nurse to take care of me. And, my husband knew he's a horrible caretaker. And I have to say, though, he has been taking care of me now for the last few years. He's actually a lovely caretaker, but maybe it was learned helplessness. I don't know, but he
It's
definitely
rusty.
felt
He had never done it before.
he had, yeah. So he felt very unqualified. And he also just emotionally, he knew that we were going to like fight. I think it would have been, I think I would have wanted him to do things. I would have got frustrated, and then our relationship would come in. He just knew it was going to be hard on us to try and do that. I realize a lot of people don't have a choice in that matter. Because we had a choice, he looked into it and said, I had a friend that knew someone who could help me, and that was a nurse that could come and take care of me. And so anyways, he came into our lives. He was amazing. And he took on the responsibility of scheduling my appointments, giving me my medications, getting up with me in the middle of the night, after my surgeries. And he didn't live with us full time. He just came during the day, but he stayed with me after my surgeries, or after my first surgery. The second surgery, my family took care of me. But that was really helpful. And then he would schedule the appointments, and he and my daughter actually took 3 months off of her job and came back and lived with me in Seattle and helped as well.
That's a big
So
help.
they had a calendar that I could see, and every day they'd tell me what we were doing, and we had a morning routine. And so I would just get up and I would just think to what is my next one little thing I have to do. So I'd open my eyes and I'd think, oh, I'm thirsty. I'm going to take a drink of water. And I literally would take my day in the tiniest baby steps. So I'd like set my bed up. I had a hospital bed. I'd set my hospital bed up, and then I'd ring my bell. I had a little bell to ring to let them know I was awake, and they'd come in. And it might take a while. So I'd maybe ring it in the beginning, then I'd take a drink of water, and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to put my cup down, and I'm going to look if I have any medicine there that I'm supposed to be taking. Because sometimes there's a pill I'm taking first thing in the morning, and we would write a time on it so I could see it. And is it time to take that pill? And by the way, it always was time to take that pill, because that's usually what woke me up. Is I'm like in a little bit of pain, and I'm like, get that pill in me as quick as possible so that I can get it on board, because it's going to get worse, and then it was just our morning routines and our get ready routine. It took me about a half hour to get out of my room with Todd's help, and he would brush my hair and do the things, and he always had made me breakfast, and I'd have breakfast with my daughter. But anyways, I just would take the tiniest little steps, and you take a million tiny steps, and eventually you get there. And so eventually it became that I was sort of in my head, okay, I'm gonna do my morning routine, and then I'm gonna sit on the couch for a bit. I'm usually gonna have an appointment that's maybe at like 9 or 10, and we'll go into some appointment or maybe 2 appointments at the hospital. And I would just get myself through just by thinking of the next thing. And just every week I would sit down and sort of think about my week and think, gosh, at the beginning of my week, it was hard for me to transfer from my chair onto the toilet because I just didn't feel that strong. And at the end of the week, I felt like I was jokingly remembering being a gymnast when I was younger and pushing myself out of my chair. And, by 3 weeks in, everybody who came in was like, you should see your back. You are cut. You are so strong, and I would lift myself up in a chair, like by my hands like this. And I was like joking that it was like my bar routine. And I would take myself and I'd hoist myself out of my wheelchair and fling myself onto the couch. And I'd get myself off the couch and fling myself into my chair. And but I would notice, I'm like, gosh, at the beginning that was really hard. And now I'm getting good at it, and then it just kept upping my game. Eventually I was able to like get up and down out of my chair onto the floor to do a little bit of exercise and learn to go up the stairs using my arms and not my legs. And I just inched forward the teeny tiniest steps. And I will say every day I would think of my future and I would get overwhelmed. And then I would say, stop it. Come back. It's okay. Don't worry about walking yet. Just worry about how are you going to get to the couch, and don't just worry about your next little thing. Don't worry about the big stuff. And sure enough, 5-6 months later, I had legs and I was walking, and, it took forever. At the time you feel like, you get your legs and it's 4 months before you're kind of walking on your own. Or at least for me, and, or maybe 3 months. And, you get there and you just do it and just keep doing that next thing. And it's different speeds for different people. And my family definitely pushed me to try things that I never would have thought to like try stand-up paddling when I didn't even walk well yet, and it's like, okay, well, hold my hand as we're walking on the sand. Because it's so, this is crazy walking on sand, but you're holding me up, and then let's get in the water and you're holding me up and then get me on the board. And gosh, all of a sudden, this isn't that hard. And
Was that
um,
before or after the prosthetics?
I did that. I did it after the prosthetics.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I didn't go anywhere until after I got prosthetics a month after I got the stitches out of my fingers. So I got prosthetics about 6 weeks after my fingertip surgeries. So I just
Wow.
basically, the first 3 months were, September through December was just hanging out and doing all the things, little teeny tiny wins. And then I got my legs, and I mean, the first month, by the end of the month, I could pivot onto a toilet and take a few steps with a walker. And, I was using a walker a little bit, but I was still using my wheelchair much of the time, because you really take it slowly so that you don't injure your limbs at all. You don't get any wear and tear, little blisters or
Yes.
pressure spots or anything. And it takes a while to get the legs to fit properly. And there's just a lot that goes into it. So you just, one thing is I'm not patient, but I'm not a type A personality. I don't need to be running and going all the time. I'm really happy. Like, I was stoked that I got to sit on a couch and watch a ton of TV
Yeah.
and watch. There's, all these new Netflix series that are telling amazing stories and such. So I really enjoyed all of that. Whereas some people, it would drive them crazy.
Right. Right. And you don't notice the progress you make while you're making progress
Right.
because
And
it's
Dave,
so small. The progress,
fully.
it's until you're 6 months out, and then you can
Yeah.
look back
Yeah.
and go,
And
oh,
even, and
wow.
I would do it weekly. I would kind of every week. I mean, I don't know if I made it but I kind of would do it just to have a win, and so I'd say, okay, well, let's,
Mhm.
remember last Sunday when your friend came over and you couldn't do this, but then this week when they came over, you stood up and you showed her how you could walk on your own, just holding onto the table, and it's just like, I would remind myself, I'm like, gosh, it was just a week ago that, Danny or Jordan came up from school, and all I could do was stand on my feet for a second, and then I had to sit back down. And now it's a week later, and I was able to stand with the walker and take 4 steps, and turn around and go back and sit back down by myself, like balance, and I would just look at these little wins, and it was enough to keep me going and keep me sane and feel like I was making progress. But then some days you'd have like a big setback, and so I knew not to take little increments of time. I knew to give myself a little time and just look for a win. I mean, I it's my positive attitude, and I think you can learn. I think that can be learned as well. I mean, I think it came to me naturally to look for the wins, but I think that's one of the things I would recommend to people is give yourself a break and look for the wins, and I mean, sure, some things went wrong this week. I mean, I lost my hair after I got my legs, and that was really
I
devastating. And
lost my hair too. There's so
it's,
many of us who lose our hair.
yes, because it's such a big trauma on our bodies. And I don't think that anyone prepares you well enough for that. But I also understand in hindsight why that is. Because I have had the opportunity to sit with a woman who was going to lose her hands, and to see her trying to cope with it, and to see her hitting her hand against her bed and saying, I can't even feel my hand. And I was looking at her thinking, I know now what it felt like for my family to see me like that, because I don't think that she's going to have that hand. I don't know for sure, but I'm looking at her hand and I'm thinking the likelihood is low that she'll even end up, ultimately with this hand, but it hasn't hit her yet. So at that point in time, and she's getting ready to leave a hospital, and they're going to be talking to her about these surgeries, and she's going to be coming to terms with this. I can understand why a nurse doesn't want to step in and go, she's probably going to lose her hair too. I can
Yeah.
understand why that's not a top priority, especially in an
That was
intensive care
endless.
unit. It's not the
Yeah.
most important thing, but I would
Yeah.
say as women, it's pretty important. And so I do always
Yes.
tell people that when I do talks for hospitals and things, I'm like, it's kind of important, guys. I mean, it's a
Right.
big identity thing to have hair and
Yes,
to
it
lose
is.
hair. And it's a big sign of illness and sickness that and we don't necessarily want to identify as that, or we don't want the whole world to see us as that. I mean, I had enough going. I was already missing legs, and I was in a wheelchair with a blanket over me with a space beneath. Then it's like, I don't want to be bald too, and I didn't have to be bald. I just got a very short haircut because it took me forever. I had I mean, I laugh at the pictures. I mean, it was I had about this much hair on my head. You could see through
Yeah.
my hair Like,
Yeah.
like you can't have nice thick hair now, but you could see through my hair, like you would see the wall behind. My hair looked like
Yes.
this spot in my hair. It was like, it looked like there were just little hairs hanging down. And by the time I finally said, I think I might be losing my hair, and they're like, yeah, I think you're losing that's like
Yeah.
90% of your hair. We could probably get it cut now. But the good news was by the time I figured that out, it was like an inch long, so I could get a cute little
Yep.
pixie cut and I still had thick hair.
And it
But
does
I
come
just
back. So anybody in our audience who is a
it
survivor and you lost
usually
your hair,
does come back. Yeah,
comes back. Yes,
we
most of
can't
the time.
guarantee it, but it usually does. I mean, it does sometimes. Definitely know with older people, and women who maybe have like menopausal hair loss and things like that, that maybe they didn't even realize they had it until they started losing it after sepsis, and then it comes back and they still have the other issues. So it's not always super thick for everyone, but you will get the hair back that you had when you became sick most of the time. Um,
Yes.
Depending on
And I
what
know
the
you're a big
complications might be.
supporter. You've gone to conferences. You've done a lot of public speaking in support of the amputee community in general.
Yes.
Um, what is some of the help and the support that you've done, some of the projects, the work that you do? I know
Um,
on Sepsis Alliance, are you involved with the amputee community, like the peer groups or anything?
I am not directly because I just don't have the time to be doing that with the other stuff I'm doing. Um,
Right.
I am I like to think that I was part of the group that helped inspire the importance of that, but I will say that I am part of the group, but it really came from everyone out there who has had sepsis for many years. This is something we've been dreaming of. And when I came on board, I got to see it come into fruition, which was amazing. And I'm good friends with the woman who co-leads it, Leslie Green, who is with Hanger Clinics. And she and I have done talks together at conferences about sepsis and amputations. And we are part of the sepsis survivor community. And so she and I have a history together. And but I mostly have spoken at those events as a sepsis survivor, and it's been really interesting because it's brought together this amazing community of survivors, but it's also made us realize that most of the quad amputees, people who are missing part of all four limbs, are from sepsis, and that this community has been growing in the 8 years that I've been involved with Amputee Coalition and Sepsis Alliance. I went in the very beginning, I was just a member going and saying, please, I need resources. So Amputee Coalition is amazing, and you can find them online,
Yes.
and they have incredible resources for amputees. Another organization that I've been really involved with is called Enhancing Skills for Life. And it's an upper limb support group for people who are missing a portion or all of both upper limbs. And it began as a response to line workers, electrical line workers who had electrical accidents and ended up losing both of their limbs, as well as congenital limb loss people. And so that group I have been involved with since COVID, I would say, is maybe the first time I went. So, I mean, I got involved with Sepsis Alliance in like 2019. It was actually right before COVID happened. And
Right.
I was invited to join the board because I had done 2 years of fundraisers for them. And they'd been trying to reach out to me because my community had given really nice donations in my name when I got sick. And then they did it again when I did my first fundraiser. And Tom Heyman happened to be coming up to Seattle. And so he reached out and said, Tom's going to be in the area. He'd love to meet you. And I went and met him, and afterwards was offered a position on the board. And it has been just this great partnership that's just been so incredible. But at that same time, or actually prior to that, I had gone to my own amputee event in August. I met him in December. And then I've been every year since as part of Sepsis Alliance. I've gone and I've set up a table for Sepsis Alliance as one of the volunteer organizations, and to provide resources to people and just to meet people. And it's just been amazing getting to meet this community. And I've shared my story about sepsis and educated people in the limb loss community, because they are at higher risk, because they're wearing prostheses that cover a limb that might have, as I mentioned before, might have wounds on it from rubbing or from limbs that don't quite fit right, or because we wear silicone liners that can just cause blisters. And so they have to watch their skin really well, not to mention the fact that a lot of people in the limb loss community are also suffering from diabetes, and that may be how they lost a limb, and that they do already have circulatory issues. And so it's been interesting to share about sepsis for people who have it and kind of provide resources for life after sepsis, but then also for the people who may end up with it because of their amputations or because of other illnesses.
Exactly. And this is a good timing for us to be recording this during Limb Loss and Limb Difference Awareness Month.
Yes, I love that.
So
It is.
I'm glad that, yeah.
And
Wear
it's really
in April.
wear orange in April and think of the limb loss community. And I think, part of it is because I've become a member of the limb loss community. I feel like it's becoming much more normalized, but I think there's a lot going on right now with the Paralympics. I think have brought a lot of awareness to different types of bodies and different types of things that can happen to people in the disability community. Right. And then I just feel like there's a lot more inclusion in advertising. And I got hired to do an ad for Rad Power Bikes for their Rad Power trike.
Oh, that's so
and
cool.
I did print. It was a print campaign and a video campaign that was online. And it was fabulous. And I felt kind of insecure about it, and I'm like, gosh, I'm kind of old, I'm kind of short, and I'm missing my legs and my fingers. Like, they were having me use the brakes, and I said, do you want to use my hands or do you want to use someone else's? And they said, no, we want to use your hands. I mean, we want to show people that you can have a different body, and we can, it's like, so the brakes on a bike now, what I do on my bike, instead of the brake being out here where I have to reach it down low, I move it up higher because my fingers aren't long. So normally you have a long finger that can reach down and grab that brake, but we just shift mine up like this, and then I can do the brakes and use them like this. And so with the Rad Power Bike, we just altered it just a little bit so that I could reach them easily. And they're like, yeah, we want to show body difference. We want to show that this is available to someone and, useful for someone who might have arthritis or might have difficulty using their fingers or might have different fingers, such as yours. You're a beautiful example of a different type of body. And it's been really interesting to just see how the world is really embracing differences in people just in a way, and it's becoming just so much more visible than it was even a few years ago. I feel like it really is improving and changing.
I feel that way too. Yeah, inclusion is definitely broadening, deepening, and spreading, which is always a good thing. And
it is.
But so I wanted to wrap up talking about your book, of course.
Yes, thank you.
So yes, you again, as we said in the beginning, Finding Solid Footing, which is going to go on sale, pre-sale at the end of April. And it will be on sale officially on May 5th. And so, and it'll be on Amazon, right?
It'll be on Amazon. It's a feat to get your book into bookstores. So I don't think that we'll find it in any bookstores on its own naturally, unless it happens to be in one of the cities that I hang out in a lot. But I do encourage people to consider doing a book club and asking your local, if you have a book club, ask your local bookstore to order it. And you can buy it through them, which is great because they can make a profit off of it. We want to keep those local bookstores going. I will have it available on Amazon, and I think I'll have a couple other sources as well. The proceeds are going to be donated to Sepsis Alliance. I have not put that in. I don't have any type of legal contract on that yet of how that's going to be done, but I contribute quite a bit of money myself, my own personal donations to Sepsis Alliance, and I want this to go toward that as well. And so you have my word that is where the proceeds from this book are going.
Being a nonprofit like Sepsis Alliance that provides so much to the community, the free continuing education credits for nurses.
Yes,
nurses,
and now for doctors.
And now for doctors.
Yes,
and they need the funding, they need the fundraising, they need the money, they need the support. 100%.
Absolutely. So I'm excited that the procedes will go to that.
But you can find make sure that I buy a copy as soon as it's available.
Please. Yes. So I highly recommend that you follow me on social media. My Facebook is my biggest platform, but most of the Facebook gets resurfaced and used also on Instagram. And the reality is that Instagram is kind of a pretty place. Like my kids have the most beautiful Instagrams. Oh my gosh, my grandson is all over them doing the cutest things.
Curate
And
those pages.
they're beautiful. They're beautiful homes.
Ill people.
Chronically ill people and amputees. It's not the most ideal. I'm not trying to present my life as beautiful and perfect. Yeah. Although I do encourage my friends to follow my kids because they do a lovely job of showing all the fun things we do as a family. But yes. I'm sharing more about life as an amputee and life as a sepsis survivor and information about that. Facebook is a great platform because there's a lot of older women on there and they really have embraced the story and they want to know more about it and they want to see how I'm living my life differently because I think a lot of people have faced something unimaginable. And yes. I didn't, the subtitle of the book, so it's Finding Solid Footing, which I think speaks for itself. It was like me getting back on my feet. And then Thriving Beyond the Unimaginable. And I really did end up in my situation. And I think it happens so often that we grow through something difficult. And so whatever that unimaginable thing is, or the thing that's happened to you, or the thing that might happen in the future that is just something that you are having difficulty facing, just having faith that you're going to get through that and get to another side and that it will lead you on a path that can maybe even be better than what you expected from your life before. And I feel truly at this point that that's where my life has led me. I think I'm doing things that are so much more meaningful than what I was doing before. I still prioritize my family. I only work part-time, sharing my story and being out in the world speaking. It took me years to write my book because I didn't want to dedicate any huge chunks of time. And it took me a long time to heal. It really did take me years to heal. It's not a quick process. So, and I couldn't really fully write the book and write the ending until I felt like I was in a place that I was healed and could really see what had happened to me beyond it. But my name on those social media platforms is Katy Sepsis Amputee, Katy Sepsis Amputee, all one word. If you look that up on Instagram, you'll find it. I think you'll find it on Facebook that way as well. You can also try me as Katy Grainger. Anyways, but my page is the place to follow me. It has over 200,000 followers, which is awesome. But the reason I'm saying that is because if that's the page you're finding, that's the right one to follow me on.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure it's really you.
Make sure it's really me. And yeah, yes. I mean, you might come across, I have to have a personal account that kind of backs that up. And I try to post things on that as well. But the real place to follow me is on my page.
Was writing the book healing, where you just mentioned how,
it was,
that you wanted to finish it when you felt you were healed. And
yeah,
in reading your words, you definitely had a stream of conscious style writing. It's made me think back to my English lit days in college. Stream of conscious. Yes.
Yeah, there's kind of a variety of different things in there because I wrote it over so many years. And so I wrote a lot of the stories / chapters or portions of chapters were written in workshops, writing workshops. And they were written on trips and they were just written at different times in my recovery. I took a year off when my mom passed away a few years ago. My family actually came to me and just said, you have so much going on. You're trying to spread yourself so thin, trying to do your advocacy work and trying to be with the family, and you're trying to travel and you just lost your mom and we don't also feel like you've really fully healed. Like, do you want to take some time for yourself? And they were so right. I did. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to. And I sort of slowed down for a year and kept putting out some content and kept, being out in the world and saying yes to some of the things I do for Sepsis Alliance, but definitely did less that year and stopped writing altogether, put all my stuff away and just said, I'm not going to write. I don't want to do this. I said no to all the workshops. And I took a year just to let myself heal. And I really, I feel like that was really my big year of healing. And I didn't write during that time. And I don't really talk about it much in the book other than that it happened because it was just a really personal time. And I think I needed that. I just needed a time that it was for me and my family and for us to just really heal together. And I came out the other side just feeling like a different person. And then I just was ready to finish the book. And I did get some help writing it too. I want to add that I do have a ghostwriter who is my writing coach. I actually have two writing coaches that I've worked with through the whole time. So I had a lot of professional help on this book, and a lot of help composing the stories in the way that I wanted them to be told. And I practiced a lot online by telling it in TikToks and things like that. So it's like, and if you were to go through my TikToks, and if you followed me for years, which I don't know that there are that many people who have followed me for years, but if you've heard me tell my story online in a big way and you read the book, you'll see that each chapter sort of has it starts like this and it gets really serious, and then we get some relief, or we end on a cliffhanger and we got to turn the page to the next chapter because something else is about to happen. And it was really fun learning that writing style and that storytelling style, and it lends itself to it very well because it was a very dramatic event, and it was just a lot of things happened along the way that were, I think, interesting and introspective and important. So I'm really pleased with it, the way it turned out.
It is wonderful. The vignettes that I've read so far are absolutely fabulous.
Well,
and takes
thank you.
Right into your mind.
Yes. And that's why I tried to really share that, because that is the part that, it's like when telling the story, I'm like, this happened, then that happened, then that happened. And they're like, well, what did that feel like? And what were you thinking? And how was that? I don't talk a lot about my family on purpose because it's not their story. And, they are there, and I think that you can make some inferences from what's going on, but it's not their story. But part of it is the story of me in the ICU is told through their perspective because it's told through text messages, and so you will get a feeling about how hard this was for them and how hard they worked and advocated for me, and I think that's really important for someone going through something like this. But the healing journey is really my own, and I keep them on the fringe just because they didn't choose to be public figures, and I have. And I want to keep it that way. And I think that the patient story really is the important story, and the family story is also. It's rare that I say I did this on my own. I don't ever say that. I mean, it was me and my family, and in the hospital, it was me and my family. It's the patients and their families. I talk about patients and their families all the time because whoever's there and showing up needs to be recognized as part of the team that is caring for this person. And for me, it was both of my daughters and my husband and friends along the way. So very important.
And this happened to you 8 years ago. For me, it's going to be 5 years. And for me, like sometimes it feels like yesterday. I mean, post-sepsis
for sure.
syndrome for me is a big deal. And a lot of people don't know about it. And,
yes,
I know we have a petition going online to try to get 5,000 signatures.
And I just signed it, and it was so easy to sign. Yeah, it was so easy to sign. It just took 1 minute, and they asked for a $5 donation, which I very happily gave them. It was easy on just to keep the platform going, but it's not something you have to do. Just sign it. Yeah. Don't give the donation. You don't need to.
And move on.
And move on. And it's it was so easy, and it's so important. And I think it's being recognized.
Close right now. It's close to the 5,000 signatures.
Good.
To go to the World Health Organization and say, we need help. Survivors need help, because what I often hear on social media when other survivors find me is, I'm still depressed and it's been 2 years. Yeah. Or I tried to go back to work after a year and I had to quit. It didn't work. And, and these are the things. Sepsis is not like surviving a cold or the flu, or, and I've had bacterial strep pneumonia before years ago after my baby daughter was born. That can't compare to what I went through with sepsis. And there's something about it that really and profoundly changes us.
It does. And people aren't aware of that. And I don't think that in the transition from the hospital to home and to rehab, I don't think it's explained well always. I was fortunate that I went to a hospital system that was the number 4 rehab hospital in the country. I mean, there was a big banner over the desk every time I went. And it's part of the reason we went back is because we knew they just had an automatic rehab. So and I'm still seeing those same doctors. I have an appointment when I go back, and they had every type of care for me that was available afterwards. I mean, prosthetics and PT and OT, and I even had exercise, or what do you call it? Like exercise therapy. Like I had someone go to the gym with me and show me how to use the machines as an amputee, and how to get on a bike and
That's
get on
marvelous.
a treadmill as an amputee. And I had all of that was so readily available, but most people don't have that. But there is now a code for insurance, the ICD-10, I believe is what they're called, for post-sepsis syndrome. And Sepsis Alliance, one of my favorite resources that I send people to all the time, is if you go into the post-sepsis section of the website, or life after sepsis, and scroll to the bottom of the page, there are letters that you can give to your coach, your employer, your doctor, to let them understand that you are not the same person that you were, and that just because you survived this doesn't mean that you are the same. And you may need to go on disability, and people don't even realize that they might qualify for it,
Right.
But I mean, it's like you may be unable to do your job. My friend who lost her fingers, she was the first person I'd met that had lost their fingers besides me. And we met in a support group, and we immediately just held hands and touched each other's hands and just said, I've never met another person missing their fingers like this. And she went back to work, and I was just like, how are you doing this? And she said, it's really hard. And then a month later I saw her, and she said, I had to quit my job. And it was really devastating, and she was able to get on early retirement, and there were resources available, because it can change you. It doesn't necessarily, but it can change you. And the symptoms can be physical, and they can also be mental and emotional. And memory is really common, I think, with people, and it could take years to come back, and it may not fully come back all the way.
Like anxiety when I go to doctors now, that I never had before. Terrified of procedures. I don't like CAT scanners, because it was the CAT scanner that diagnosed the perforated
you
venule.
associate it. I did great therapy for that, and I call that PTSD specifically, but it's an anxiety that you get at the doctor specifically, because you have the memories of the events and stuff. But I did EMDR, which is an eye movement therapy, and it was really healing for me.
Yes.
It was really healing. And my husband did it as well. And our trigger was walking from the parking garage on the lower level of the hospital system, because it's on a corner, and it's like 3 buildings on corners. Huge in Seattle. It's a huge hospital. And so we park in the one building, and then you come through the tunnel, and we go right by the operating room where I had both sets of my surgeries, where I had my legs removed and then my fingers. And we would both have panic attacks, but we didn't ever talk about it until a ways in, and I finally said, I can't do that. I'm realizing I'm having like this panic attack. And then we go and get in the elevator, and I'd be like, like feeling like I wasn't breathing right, and I'd be having to like try and talk myself through breathing exercises to calm down. And he and I both went in and did this eye movement therapy, EMDR. And I read about it, and it's proven to work well with people in combat situations. So they've shown in the military that it really helped relieve the symptoms. And he and I both had very immediate results, to where we could go by that. And I go by there now, and I could still, but pretty quickly, with just like a couple sessions, could walk by that room, and then, like, if the doors were open, I'd look in there, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's where I did this, and that's where I did that. And I just because I just felt safe. I mean, and part of what you do when you do it is you remind yourself of, like, what are you afraid of? And then it's like, but what's the reality? And the reality is I'm just going by in my chair, and I don't have to do that again. And it's like, right, so what are you worried about? And I mean, it seems, I'm oversimplifying it, and there's professionals who do it for you, and they walk you through it. And I cried a lot, and it was hard when I did it, but I had really quick results, and it really felt amazing. But there are other things that people can try as well. But I recommend putting that on the list for people of something to give a try if you're having issues like that.
Most definitely. Yes.
And a lot of it is just us letting people know you're not alone, and you're not wrong. It is real. Like, what you're experiencing is real. Because a lot of times I think people doubt themselves, and they're like, gosh, it's been 2 years. I mean, but I'm depressed, but I mean, it's been 2 years. It shouldn't be an issue. Yeah, it should. If it's happening to you, it's real, and acknowledge it, and seek help for it. And it should be covered by insurance, even as part of the sepsis ordeal, and I mean, not everyone has insurance that covers mental health and things like that, but it's getting better, but it's not getting better globally, and we're working on it. And you and I go to Washington, we try to make things, we're trying to improve it, but it's an uphill climb.
we just never quit.
Yeah.
Because if you
Got to
quit,
keep going.
then we can't keep going uphill. Even if we're just getting up there inch by inch by inch, we're
Yeah.
moving it forward. Keep pushing
Well, and
forward.
one thing I'd like to say too is that please, if you're thinking about wanting to share your story and interested in what
Yeah.
Jackie and I do, which we both do advocacy in different ways, please reach out
Yes.
to us and
Yeah.
we can help connect you and join the Sepsis Connect community and become a part
Right.
of that. There's incredible resources. There's a ton of videos. I'm making a video next month that will be live, I think, it's a Monday, the 17th maybe of May. It's the
May.
Monday, and
Yeah.
it's going to be on Sepsis Alliance Connect, but it'll be live. But then it'll go into the files, and you'll be able to access it at any time. But it's going to be talking. It's three people who have written books and have told our story. We're going to be talking about how to share your story, and how
Yes.
to encourage others and educate about whatever you have going on in your lives that. Maybe you didn't know enough about, and you want to let others know that there are people out there who've been through it, and we want to support one another. And I've seen this community of just advocates sharing about their things, and I've seen it really growing over the years. When I first 8 years ago, it was hard for me to find other sepsis survivors and other amputees where I could really get information from them. And now I have a million friends out there. Not really, but I have lots
Yeah.
of friends out there that I've
It
made
feels
through
like
doing what I'm
there's a
doing.
lot of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah,
There
there
are a
are.
lot of us. You're not
Yeah.
alone.
No.
Listeners, viewers, you are definitely not alone.
And our
1.7
voices
million
matter
affected
so
a year.
much.
Yes. Our voices, those are the ones that the staffers on Capitol Hill listen to the most,
Yeah.
is our story.
And your
So,
hospitals want to hear from you, and the places that you were
yeah.
treated, they want to hear what your patient experience was. And it doesn't need to be as faceless as just a questionnaire, I mean, you should fill those out if you can, but give them their feedback. But they're looking for advocates to work within the system and to speak to nursing groups or to speak to critical care groups or doctors or,
Medical
just,
students.
yeah, students.
Yeah.
Educate in your community, go to your schools and make sure that your kids, the nurse that's on call at the school understands what sepsis is or understands, whatever it is that you want them to understand. It's just like we can reach out in our community, and then we can just reach out with our peers and let them know the things that we want to share with them. But we all have stories, we all have experiences, and we learn from one another.
Yeah. That's a perfect parting words. Anything
All
else
right.
you'd like to leave our audience with, Katy?
Okay, my favorite thing that I got out of this whole thing is it's really tempting when you're at your lowest moment to find a place of despair and to feel like you're going to be stuck there. And so I just really encourage people to know that we're going to go through deep lows, but when they happen, please don't judge your life on that. And please don't judge that as the moment that's going to define you or the moment that you're going to be stuck in, because we continue growing. And if you set your sights one little tiny step at a time, you will grow out of that, and you may even thrive because of it. So just don't judge yourself at that moment, and don't, if possible, try not to let yourself fall into that place of despair, because if you lose all sense of hope, it's really hard to get out of that. And so just hang on to that little twinkle of hope and reach for it one little tiny step at a time, and it can help move you forward, because we are so much stronger than we ever imagined. That's what I learned from my whole process.
That's beautiful. Katy, that is
Thank
beautiful.
you.
What a beautiful sentiment. I want to thank you, Katy, for being here with me this evening and recording this episode. Audience, I want to thank you for tuning
Absolutely.
in again. Really, really appreciate you. Do not forget, pre-sale end of April, Finding Solid
Woo.
Footing.
Yes,
Katy
and find information on my socials. And thank you, Jackie. You're amazing. Thank you. This is so incredible what you're doing. And I hope this community continues to grow. Please tell your friends and family to join in and watch the shows and go look at the back episodes and see all the people that she's had on here. She's doing amazing, amazing work.
Thank you, Katy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last thing I want to tell our audience, always remember, this is for information purposes only. If you have a medical emergency, call your doctor, go to your local ER, call 911. Thank you all, and peace out. We'll see you next time.